Welcome to the Catalyst Life Coaching Podcast with John Kim and Noelle Cordeaux.
The next Catalyst Life Coaching Intensive begins November 12th.
If you're inspired to begin your own coaching practice or just want to learn a little bit more about what it's all about, visit shift.us, SHFT.us, for more information. Your adventure awaits.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Catalyst Life Coaching Podcast. With me today is Science. So Noelle's new nickname is Science, because she's the science behind everything. And I asked her what the opposite of science was, because that would be me, and her answer was ignorance.
But then we Googled it, and it's actually magic.
Yes, or magic or art. So with you guys today is a little bit of science and a little bit of magic.
Science and magic. I like it. Right in time for Halloween.
Absolutely. And so what we're going to talk about today is empathy, right? The two types of empathy. Yeah,
empathy is a big deal. I think it's been a buzzword that we've been hearing a lot in the news recently, and it's a trait that we all have and can build it and exercise it like a muscle. And I think it's something that not a lot of people understand in context of how you can use it and work with it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. But I do agree that with everything that's going on in the world, the good news is it's creating a space for us to actually feel and be empathetic to each other.
And that's so important because we are so connected to one another. Our actions, even on a day in and day out basis with kindness, ripple so far and wide. And I think that one of the things that's happened with modern life and technology is that we've become disconnected and isolated from each other.
Sure. But also, when there's events that happen, I know when 9/11 happened, the aftermath of that was a lot of people coming together, average people being heroes, a lot of empathy. There was a time when, people would be extra kind to each other and understanding and, all that kind of stuff. So I think now that is also happening. People are just more empathetic.
I think so. And it's... And let's get into what empathy is and the two different kinds of empathy, because it's a really important distinction. So there are two kinds of empathy. The first kind is called affective empathy. And affective empathy is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you personally are affected. And it refers to the sensations and feelings you get in response to others' emotions. So this means that if your partner is stressed at home, you start feeling stressed, and you take on their emotions.
Right.
And then there's another kind of empathy that's more of an in-control, powerful kind of empathy, and it's called cognitive empathy. And this is when you have perspective, and you don't internalize somebody else's stress, but you can understand somebody else's emotions and understand how somebody else is feeling and relate to them.
Yes. There's a lot of crunching and crumbling happening. Are you rolling around in potato chips?
I'm not. That's really interesting.
Because if you were, I'd be very empathetic, and I would try to understand what that feels like. Okay, sorry. Here's what's interesting. So I think that affective empathy is it could be dangerous, right? It could get us to kind of lose ourselves. No.
Yeah, affective empathy can be dangerous, and I think that, when people feel empathy naturally, or they have a very strong empathy chip, like you were saying this to me the other day, you think I feel things more deeply than other people, yeah. And I think to some extent that's true.
Sure.
The danger in relying on affective empathy is that you're not in control over the way that you experience other people's emotions, that you take them on, you become subject to them, you get lost in them, you try to heal them, you try to save them, and that leads to codependent relationships and, honestly, a lot of misery.
Yeah, the word that comes to my mind is meshment.
Oh, yeah.
So as coaches, we have to practice cognitive empathy rather than affective empathy, correct?
Yes. And cognitive empathy perspective taking is when you can engage with another human, when you feel like you have an understanding of where they're at mentally and emotionally, where you identify with their emotions, but you hold that space with a boundary around it, and you empathize with them.
How do you create that boundary?
It starts from within.
Yeah.
That boundary has to be internal. And, sometimes we were actually just talking about this on Sunday with our new catalysts in training. They said, well, what do you do if you have a client and you can see that client's problem and they are just unwilling to change? And I said two things, that's not my story and that's not my problem.
Right.
And that sounds a little harsh, but you can have, and I can have, the most empathy in the world for someone going through something, and I can believe in them, and I can know that they can overcome it, and I can have faith in their capacity to turn their life around. However, I'm not the one to do it.
Yeah, you know what? One of the greatest misconceptions about life coaching is that a lot of people think that if they can't change the other person, then that's a direct reflection on how good of a coach they are. And you really have to cut that, because that is not true.
Absolutely. And beyond coaching, it goes for all relationships.
Right.
I think it's really hard to be in a relationship with somebody else and watch them experience pain and watch them experience struggle and set that boundary of saying, it's not my story, it's not my problem. Yet I'm going to stand next to you, I'm going to stand with you, and I'm going to, be strong so that you can figure out your own shit.
Yeah, man, I love that. And what we're talking about is so important. I just posted a photograph that I saw, and I was like, wow, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. And it's basically two people in bathtubs, and they're kind of looking out at the world, but they're in two different, what I call, containers. And I think a lot of people think, a healthy relationship would be those two people in a jacuzzi. And that's the meshment, that's the codependency. And I think in relationships, no matter what kind of relationship, it could be your friend, your child, or it could be your husband, wife, whatever. They are on their own journey, and support doesn't mean to control them or to fix something. It's guiding, it's being with them, it's holding their hand, not taking their steering wheel.
Absolutely. And when you have empathy for somebody in that way, you're actually empowering them.
Right, instead of enabling them.
Exactly. You're empowering them to do the work. And that's, a solid relationship, whether it's a friendship, a sibling, a parent, a lover, you guys are going to be at your best when you're both standing solidly.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of it is cultural, because for me, I got married kind of young, and I used to think that love meant, we're basically one person. It's all or nothing. It's like, I thought that if you really love someone, that you basically sacrifice your own self. Love is compromise, but love is not compromising self.
I think I had that. I got married young too, and I think that I had that view as well. That you had to kind of lose yourself and your own sense of agency in the relationship in order for it to be effective. And I think what happens there is that after years and years and years, you have one person in the relationship whose goals have been actualized, or who has been supported, or who has been the focus, and the other one ends up just pissed off and bitter.
Right.
That's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to circle this back around to talking about cognitive empathy and talking about, as we have our own life stories, and using our own life story as a way to engage in empathy with others, but also using our story as kind of a boundary to make sure that when we're working with someone, or even working or engaging in a friendship or a conversation with a partner, that we're not making it about us.
Right.
So when you're a coach, you tend to share your story up front, and that's what attracts people to you. And we've seen so much, especially in the past couple of weeks, the power of the story, the power of the narrative. And that's really what we've built our whole collective of coaches around, are all of these unique voices out there in the world who are saying, this is my deal, this is what I went through, this is how I can help you. And that draws people to them because, people are like, oh, I want some of that. I want to work with somebody who's been through what I've been through. But then you actually go into the coaching conversation, it's not supposed to be about you. It's supposed to be about your client.
Right.
And so, how do you as a coach use your story to help your client without making it about you? What do you think?
So I believe in this, and I've been doing this for the last decade. I think the way that you use your story is you have to really think about, are you sharing your story? Is that about you? Are you tap dancing? Are you showing off? Are you telling someone that this is how something should be? Or are you using your story so they can, for them, meaning that they can relate to it, they could, feel better about where they're at, or they could learn something from it. So it's this whole giving or taking mode. And I think a lot of people, if their intention is sharing their story to help someone else, I think it's powerful. I think when you are sharing your story in a very taking, or if there's ego involved, or you're bragging, or you're verbally vomiting on someone, then now you're taking, and that's not correct.
Absolutely. And I think a really nice mechanism to use empathy and pull from it in the room is to say, I remember when. Here we go. I remember I had a client who was going through a divorce, and I remember that fucking point of pain that she was sitting with. And in that moment, I remembered when I was in her shoes, when I was at that spot. And rather than telling her what I went through, I just simply said, you know what? I remember this. I remember this feeling. I remember this space. I have complete empathy for you in this moment. And guess what? You're going to be fine.
Yeah, so when Noelle just said, "I remember when," basically it draws you in, it pulls you, and you're also connecting with your client. When you say something like, well, this is how it should be done because this is how I did it, now you're talking at them instead of with them.
Absolutely, and saying "I remember" is also hopeful because you're now as a coach on the other side. And your active position of having lived through your story is like a beacon. It's like a lighthouse.
Yeah.
For others to kind of say, well, I can do it too. And so I think that even the act of sharing your story and having that bravery is kind of giving to collective empathy with everybody. And I think that's what we've seen with this Me Too campaign.
Yeah, 100%. And so for me, sometimes I'll even say, this is what worked for me, and I'll share a story.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a good one.
I really believe in the power of story. I think that there's this tipping point when you not only accept and embrace your story, which first of all is really hard because most people don't like their story. Most people want to rip out chapters of their story or things that happen that's lined with shame and guilt. But when you get to the point where you actually accept it, but then also embrace it and then start to share it, there's a point where it tips, and where it tips is when it becomes bigger than you. And this is what we're talking about, using your story to help other people. So when other people are benefiting from the divorce you went through, or from the addiction you overcame, or all this kind of stuff, your journey, then it's not about you. Then your story is really powerful because it's affecting many, many other people.
It is, and it becomes a collective experience. And I think that's the important piece, is that the more people who stand up and say, I'm imperfect, this is my story, right, and this is how I overcame it, you're giving permission to everybody else out there who feels ashamed, who feels scared, who right, feels stuck, right, to get on their own journey of life and move the fuck forward.
And I think that's why it's so important for people to be vulnerable, and especially people in media, people that that the world thinks have lived perfect lives. When they pull the curtain back, it's so much more powerful because we have this perception on celebrities and other people out there in the media who we think quote unquote are perfect.
Nobody's perfect. Everybody struggles. I was talking this weekend to our catalysts in training about the concept of sonder.
What's that?
Sonder is cool. It's kind of like an Urban Dictionary type term, but I think it's becoming really resonant. Sonder is the concept that, when you walk around on the street, you're in your own head. You're stuck in your own thoughts, and those thoughts go down deep. And you might be in a rabbit hole. You might not even be noticing the colors on the trees around you. Everybody else who's walking on that street is having the same kind of experience of being in their head, in their interior, thinking about their own lives, their own fears, their own dysfunction, and oftentimes when you're in that moment, you feel so alone.
Yeah.
You feel like you're the only one. You feel like, your shit smells the worst. And it's just simply not true. We are all collectively having this human experience of being alive and really struggling existentially with who we are.
That's actually what pulls people out of the quicksand, I think, the most, the fastest, is when you have that feeling or that sense of community or that realization that you're not the only one. It's when you feel like you're on an island where things get very dark very fast.
100%. And we know that connection to others is the first step in fulfilling meaning and purpose in life.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes, because we are tribal creatures, because we are hardwired to be part of a group, to be part of a community, is that simple act of connecting, of having a me too in whatever form it exists for you, that brings you back into the fold and kind of opens up your heart and your psyche and gives you a new threshold to start living.
Yeah, so what do you prescribe or what do you recommend to people who actually right now are listening to this and they feel very alone?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that loneliness is a natural part of human existence. Everybody experiences it, and I think that when people experience loneliness and isolation, it's easy to internalize it and feel like there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Everybody goes through it in different seasons and flavors of life. And what the chemical experience of loneliness actually is, or feeling alone, is a signal to you that you need to get back with your tribe, that you need to get back around other people. So rather than taking it as a death sentence, or a sentence of some sort that you must remain alone, ashamed, or isolated, take it for what it is, a chemical reaction that's telling you to get back with other people.
Yeah.
And start taking steps towards that.
I think a lot of people, maybe it's pride, I don't know what it is, but they feel like, oh, you know what, I can do this by myself, I don't need others. And I think that with that mentality, you're just creating your own prison. You're not meant, here's the thing, you're not meant, maybe you can do it by yourself, but you're not meant to. And why would you,
Absolutely. And, if we were capable of all quote unquote doing it on our own, then every single one of us out there would be living our best lives, would be living the lives of our dreams. But the reality is that we need a network. Yes. We need other people around us. We need to be connected in order to thrive.
Absolutely. And speaking of network and connection and community, let's talk a little bit about what we've built.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I never anticipated that our life, our world, our community would be like this. And I'm so proud. So what we have built is an amazing community of almost 7,000 people, almost 200 coaches, all coming together in complete acceptance and love, to hear each other fully, to share stories, to share narrative, and to partner with people who are going through the same things, and to partner with our coaches to go out on the journey of life and accomplish their goals together.
Yeah, and I want to just make clear, Noelle's not talking about, our 100,000 plus followers or reach. She's talking about our community, as in, the people that are very active, establishing relationships offline, engaging, like a legit real community that is supporting and encouraging each other every day.
Yep, we have events, we have meetups. A bunch of people in our organization are doing a Friendsgiving in the Midwest. There's going to be a retreat in Asheville. We do a retreat in LA. I personally have flown all over the country meeting members of our tribe and our organization and our coaches, and it's awesome. Like, I've been saying forever, it's amazing that you can get that many people together in a group and there are no assholes.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been very fortunate. There hasn't been, hecklers or, but also we've been really good, I think, at setting the temperature so we attract people, like-minded people who are really about, self-betterment and wanting to live better lives.
Yep, doing life together, becoming the best version of yourself through community and coaching. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, so if you guys aren't in it, then please jump into it. We have a closed Facebook group called This Is Your Tribe, and Noelle and I are reachable. But also, let's talk a little bit more about how to now. I think a lot of people listen to podcasts; they get a lot of information. Going back to this idea of practicing cognitive empathy, whether you're a coach or not. How do you start applying this, into your relationships? I want people to leave with a takeaway, not only what it is, but how can they start to, actually practice this?
Sure.
So we mentioned boundaries, right? That was the first one.
Well, I think when we're talking about boundaries, I think the more important piece with boundaries is to know what it feels like to have a firm boundary, because it takes practice and balls to say to someone in your life, whether it's a client or a partner or a friend, you can do it, and then step back and let them do it. I think there's a natural impulse and a natural inclination to get in there and do it for someone.
Right.
So you have to know what your own internal cues are. Do you feel a tightness in your throat? Do you feel something in your stomach? Do you feel stress when you're around somebody who's stressed out all the time? The first step one is figuring out if your boundaries are broken. And if you're experiencing that on a regular basis, it's time to tighten it up.
And how do you tighten it up?
I think self-talk is really helpful. Asking yourself, will this person's problem, matter in a year? And just kind of doing your own self-assessment. I think that's really helpful in relationships, because it's really hard to watch a partner struggle, is to kind of do your own reality check of, like, is whatever this person's upset about, is this going to matter in a year? And put it in perspective for yourself. And then being honest with your partner, your clients, your friends, and just say, I have my own shit, and this is yours.
Yeah, and I think it's redefine what it looks like to care for someone, because my definition, 10, 15, 20 years ago is very different than my definition today, and this overlaps being practicing cognitive empathy. Caring for someone isn't controlling. Caring for someone isn't, a lot of shoulds in your senses. Caring for someone isn't determining what is best for someone. Caring for someone is supporting, guiding, understanding, and practicing empathy with boundaries, right? Understanding what they're going through, but not fixing. So at our company we talk about creating instead of fixing.
And yes, and creating versus fixing is the action of goal accomplishment, right? Of building what you want in your life. And I think when it comes down to interpersonal relationships, it's learning, not fixing. So you come from a stance of, I want to learn about this person. I want to learn what makes them tick. I want to learn what their pressure points are, what their vulnerabilities are. I want to understand them so that I can empathize with them, but I'm not going to change them, run their life, do something for them.
Here's what's really interesting, and also can be challenging, is if someone is used to effective empathy, right? So my parents are old school. They have a very codependent, dysfunctional relationship, and my dad is completely addicted to and expects effective empathy, meaning, hands-on, blah blah blah. And when if you were to actually practice cognitive empathy with him, there would be a lot of pushback. He would think that you didn't love him because now you have some kind of boundary, which is healthy.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard. That expectation of when I'm stressed, you must be stressed too.
Yes. He would, at an early age, at age 10, 11, 12, our family was in debt, and he would tell his kids, and we were just kids. I mean, we didn't have the ability to, go out and fix our family debt, but he would put all his anxiety, worry, I don't know if we can make it, I don't know if we're going to be in America much longer. I mean, things that you shouldn't be telling your kids. So putting his anxiety and his worry into us, into his kids. And I think he did it because with his definition, it just means we're a family. We're all in this together. We all, either survive or don't together. And maybe that was his definition of love, but it definitely wasn't healthy. And now as a grown-up, that has made me wired to worry and, think that the sky is falling.
Yeah. So if I were coaching you through a situation with your dad, a really effective statement is, when X happens, I experience Y.
Yeah.
So to say to your dad, or to say to a romantic partner, when you pop off, when you fly off the handle, when you demonstrate your stress in this way and expect me to come along with you, this is what I experience, and this is what I want to experience differently.
Yes, I don't know if that works with our parents because our parents are dried cement. But,
yeah, right.
But definitely that is kind of the format. Is and guys, this is a tip when you're communicating that if X then Y, and the Y should be, this is how I'm feeling, and it's not so much that you are saying you make me feel a certain way or that there's blame, but this behavior, these words, this action makes me feel this way.
Yeah, and it even works in terms of, when I said XYZ, this is what I thought was going to happen. Instead, this whole other thing happened, and I was really surprised.
Right.
Let's get back to the root of what I wanted to experience in the relationship.
And if the other person has tools, they will address how you feel and create a safe space for you. They'll validate your feelings, and then you communicate back and forth.
Absolutely.
And that's how trust is built, understanding, and that's how people feel connected and not alone.
Indeed, and it's healthy. That's a healthy way to exist in a relationship.
Yeah. Well, guys, we hope that this conversation was helpful. I mean, it's interesting to just not only look at empathy, but look at the two different types of empathy. We hope you guys actually not only listen to what we're doing, but practice it. So practice cognitive empathy instead of effective empathy. And what else, Noelle? Where they can reach us, or what other? How do you want to end this? Other information?
Absolutely. So I take calls with anybody who's interested in becoming one of our Catalyst Life Coaches. So if this is something you've been tinkering with, if you like listening to us, if you are interested in gaining skills to better run your own life, in addition to possibly becoming a coach, book a call with me. You can get to me through our website. You can continue listening to our podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, our Facebook communities, and find out all about what we're doing with our tribe, our events, and our communities.
All right, guys. Magic and Science signing off. Hope you guys have an awesome day, and subscribe to this podcast if you want a notification when we air these, and we will continue our dialogue and try to help you guys live a more meaningful life.
Awesome. We're gonna have to get Magic and Science tattoos, John.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Be well.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Catalyst Life Coaching Podcast presented by SHFT. If you'd like to learn more about what you've heard on today's show, head to shft.us. That's SHFT.us for more information. Feel free to rate us, review us, and tell a friend.